never met someone who deserves the day the way that you do, Joseph. It's time to get ready and the spotlight's shining down upon you, Joseph. So be fast, oh, from I'm on my way, yeah, here it comes. And I'm delivering a wish to you, so get ready, from every peak and valley they're telling you to get ready, 'cause here it comes. It's on the way. It's a celebration across the nation.
Hey, listen up, y'all. I'm gonna shout out this young gun right here because he's trying to do his thing. Joseph Jaffe, not famous. Probably rightfully so. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm famous because, you know, he not famous. And he like, yo, let me call my famous friends and see if they'll shout me out and make me more famous, sir. Right? But so, Joseph Jaffe, man, it's cool. You got your late night talk show popping off. That's what's dope. Streaming, been doing your thing, man. Started this in March of the 2020, which is, tough throughout the years, but booking great guests, man. Jamal Mashboard, James Rollins, steady building it, man. Keep it popping off, man. Keep building your brand, man. Believe in yourself. Keep going hard, all right? That's what it's all about. One of these days, this little acronym of yours, not famous, is not going to be true. People going to see you in the mall and be like, I know who you is. Them going to be your cousins saying it all incorrect like that. But you know what I'm saying? You know what you going to do. What you going to do? They family. All right, bro. I'll holler.
A spring in your step. There is a twinkle in your eye.
I can throw a rhyme down for you real quick. Yes, they call me Thrill. They say that I'm the man. You disagree, how could you? Let me make you understand.
Should we bring her on the show? Can anybody find me? And there she is.
Fresh as some bread. Pull right from the oven. When you feel rejected, get some my loving.
Take on me.
She looks wonderful. Mom looks amazing.
Somebody too. Okay, more bugger off now. I've got to show it to you.
Love. Like that?
Joseph Jaffe, ladies and gentlemen.
You just made the new intro of the show. Yes. How are you? It is hump day. It is April 13th. And I am glad to be back. In fact, I never went away. I was here yesterday. I will be here tomorrow as well. But today we will be present. We will learn from the past. We will plan for the future, but we will live in the present. And present here today is Anthony Calumet, who said, it's been a while since I connected, but the opening is amazing, Joseph. Well, thank you. Wait until you see the middle and even the closing. Wait till you see my guest. It is, thank you, Kevin is here as well. I appreciate it very much. And Glenn is here as well. Hey, Anthony, I saw your post about Baskin-Robbins' terrible logo rebrand. They changed their old logo because they said it was too childish and too juvenile. You're an ice cream store, franchise, retail outlet dealing with juveniles, for God's sake. I mean, it's crazy. Someone made a lot of money, Peter Ornell or someone like that. Baratunde Thurston, wait a second. He's backstage and he's on YouTube. The man is everywhere. He has successfully cloned himself. Well, one thing that is not cloned is the Alpha Collective. This is my new venture that will start minting very, very soon. Just want to let you know that there is a way for you to win a pass worth 1 ETH. And for those of you that don't know what an ETH is, you're probably going to get rugged at some point very soon. So we won't, there's a fiat option as well, but you can win a pass worth 1 ETH. All you got to do is go to alphacollective.xyz and sign up for email updates. And we're going to be doing that every single week as we mint out, or as we go down and explore minting out. This show is brought to you by Joe Polizzi's CEX, the Creator Economy Expo, by creators, for creators, to creators, through creators. It's basically just all about creators. And there are a whole bunch of people that are going to be speaking there. I'm having them on my show. But if you use the code Jaffe or Not Famous to register, you will get $200 off your pass. And you'll get a walk-on role on the show, which I'll be doing live tapings every day. And wait, there's not all. We'll have drinks together, a little private drinks together, a little bit of an experiential component here. Drinks with me, on me. You can even pour them on me if you like, but we will get to hang out together. And you can find out, obviously, more at cx.expo. But let's focus on this week. Well, yesterday, actually, we had Jamar Johnson and the day before Nora Dunn, two of the speakers at CX. But today we have Baratunde Thurston, tomorrow Zoe Skaman. We're going to find out, in fact, if I've been mispronouncing her name is Skaman or Scammon. We felt as long as far as Web3 was concerned, Skaman was better than Scammon. Nobody wants to get scammed, especially by someone with Scammon in their name. So Zoe Skaman, I hope I've been pronouncing it right, and I'm looking forward to you coming in tomorrow. Also, this was just an amazing episode last Friday. The Gratitude Gang, Erwin Valencia, the founder, was on the show. We will be giving away on tomorrow or Friday's show a seed of gratitude, one of their NFTs. And all you have to do is join my Discord, paste your YouTube username if you have subscribed to the show, which we hope you have, you are, you will, you do. And I'm getting verklempt. Follow us on Twitter, give up your third-born child to the metaverse, rename your dog after me, all of these very onerous tasks, and we will send you an NFT. Just go ahead and paste that in the giveaways channel in my Not Famous Discord. Well, it is time. I'm rattling through this because I want to bring on my guest. By the way, just looking at some of the comments that are out there, Baratunde Thurston is on LinkedIn as well. The man has now cloned himself on YouTube, in the green room, and on LinkedIn. I love it. Anthony says exactly, BR blew it. And Kevin Keller said the brown and pink logo is awful. Was that the old one or the new one? I'm not really sure. Someone actually said, I think maybe Anthony said, it looks like cryptocurrency as well. So maybe you can get the Baskin Robbins token and buy. That would be cool. That actually would be cool. But let's get on with the show. And today's Seated Soliloquy, if you are new to the show, you would know that the Seated Soliloquy is always connected to my guest today. And today we're going to talk about the idea of regeneration and the concept of regeneration. And so I decided to call this one degeneration. Now, I went and looked up the definition of what is this idea of regeneration. And probably the best way to describe it is, if you think about a starfish, this idea of losing a limb and then being able to regrow a limb. It's very much a biological term. It's very much something that is connected to organisms. And I think, like, when we think about life and we think about organisms, I mean, we are organisms, are we not? But also, if we want to create a better place, a better space, a better world, a world that really is not about us anymore, but about our children and their children and so on and so forth, then we have to start to think about how a new generation can ultimately deliver regeneration. Not just us for them, but them for whomever comes next. Now, I was thinking about this idea of you cut off a limb and a limb grows back, the lizard's tail, if you will. And I was thinking about a couple of real life examples. The concept of you cut off one head, two grow back. Well, there's a good one. There's a good example, analogy, and then there's a bad one. Well, the bad one is scammers. And there are so many scammers right now in the Web3 space. Just in general, there are a lot of scammers, spammers out there. They're bad people. As my friend Brian Fanzo says, that you can't really stop bad people doing bad things, but you can force them out if you focus on the good and if you feed the good. So unfortunately, when one scam is blown apart or exposed, there's always another couple of scammers behind them, but you can force them out when the brands come in, when quality comes in, when real content creators come in, when real personalities like Baratunde come in. That's when ultimately, the concept of the porn and gamblers and direct marketers and scammers, they move on to the next platform. But then there's a really positive or optimistic way to think about it, which is if you try and stop something. Victor Hugo said there is nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come. If you try and shut down crypto, if you try and control it, if you try and regulate it, if you try and regulate and control something that is meant to be decentralized and try and centralize it, ultimately you cut off one head and two will grow back. So there is a positive association as well with this idea of regeneration. So why did I call this degeneration? Because the degens, the crypto degens, the denizens, the people of Web3 that are trying to create a better place, a better space, a democratized one where shared ownership, shared reward truly does move from the equivalent of the 1%ers to everyone else, then ultimately the next generation or the next degeneration will be responsible for the regeneration, will be responsible, and certainly Baratunde will talk to this today, that we leave the world in a better place than when we found it. That is every single one of our goals, our missions, our purposes. And it's time for us to live that purpose and live up to the expectations and the potential that each and every one of us starfish have in common. Well, enough about starfish, and let's talk about a star. Let's talk about Baratunde Thurston and a little bit about his background, and it is an amazing one. Baratunde Thurston holds space for hard and complex conversations with his blend of humor, wisdom, and compassion. He's an Emmy-nominated host who has worked for The Onion, produced for The Daily Show, advised the Obama White House, and wrote the New York Times bestseller, How to Be Black. He's the creator and host of How to Citizen with Baratunde, which Apple named one of its favorite podcasts of 2020, and for which he received the Social Impact Award at the 2021 iHeart Radio Podcast Awards. He's also a founding partner of the new media startup Puck and host of the forthcoming America Outdoors with Baratunde Thurston on PBS. In 2019, he delivered what MSNBC's Brian Williams called one of the greatest TED Talks of all time. Baratunde is unique in his ability to integrate and synthesize themes of race, culture, politics, and technology to explain where our nation is and where we can take it. Baratunde serves on the boards of Build and the Brooklyn Public Library, and he lives in Los Angeles, California. Please join me in welcoming him to the show. Baratunde, welcome to the show.
Hello, Joseph. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Great to be here.
It is great to have you. We hung out a little bit, very briefly, in Austin at South by Southwest, and did it feel? I was going to say, I've got my own little self-censoring. It felt awesome to just be IRL together.
Yes, it did. I'm actually still feel like I'm kind of in recovery from just the amount of humanity and unmasked humanity that I was around for a full week down in Texas. Good time, didn't get any COVID, feeling lucky as well, and really, really fortunate to be able to just have spontaneous human contact, unscheduled. Zoom is such a scheduled way to live our lives, and so just to bump into people in line or eating tacos or eating anything, really just eating with other people who I don't live with was really exciting.
Basically, you've distilled the entire IRL experience down to just eating with people that you don't live with. Especially so you can't see like their bad eating habits. It was funny for me because I went to Austin, also didn't get COVID, just came back from Copenhagen, where there is no status because there is nothing there. It's not like You know, and I was in London. You don't have to get tested to go to London. If you have COVID in London, you can choose whether you want to stay at home or not. But Copenhagen, there's nothing. And I got back and I was tested. Got tested before, after, nothing as well. And it's tormented me in a way, because I've experienced what life was like before, what
Yeah.
life should be like again. And I'm so confused now as a citizen, someone who likes to obey the law and listen and trust in media and trust in government. And I'm so confused now because I don't know who to trust anymore, because ultimately I'm like, well, I guess I'll continue to wear a mask on a train, on a plane, and do what I'm expected to do. But you know what? I just don't know what to believe anymore, because the human in me needs to connect at all costs. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel kind of coming through this now. When you look at the media, when you look at government, at these institutions that we need. I asked my daughter, by the way, who's studying in Copenhagen, I said, why is it like this here? And she said, because we just trust. The people of Denmark trust their government. Government says wear a mask, we wear a mask. Government says get vaccinated, we get vaccinated, or they get vaccinated. So do you have any thoughts on it? Because help me be a little less confused, or are you as confused as I am?
I am confused as well. And, you know, I heard Anthony Fauci very recently just throw up his hands and say, in rough translation, do whatever the hell you want. It's on you now. You know, it's up to every American to make their own individual choice about how to defend against this pandemic. I'm done. And he kind of threw in the towel. And I can only imagine, I really can't imagine actually the amount of stress he's been through trying to be the face of and the leader of the response to this thing. But I also think the government in this country has created confusion, has been very patronizing, has not trusted the people with the truth, and refused to acknowledge that things change, and instead was kind of withholding information that wasn't convenient in terms of the narrative. And so now the lack of trust that we already have so much of in the US as our default setting, you know, we're founded by people who don't trust government. That has just turned up several dials, amplified by
true,
social
yeah.
media and algorithms and conspiracy theories. So Fauci's concession, how I think about it, was really fitting and a bit sad, because, you know, to your point about Copenhagen, like, we don't have that level of trust. We actually build up our status by proving how much we distrust the government, which in a democracy means we distrust ourselves. And so I am also confused. I am also exhausted. I am also saddened. And I'm hopeful that we will maintain and hopefully improve a little bit in terms of the situation, and that COVID doesn't keep taking huge bites out of our population in terms of lives, in terms of cost, in terms of emotional exhaustion, and just managing protocols and testing and it's a lot to put on individuals to handle. But that's kind of America turned up to 11. It's up to the individual.
You know, I just realized that Fauci waved his hands in the air and he waved them around like he just didn't care. I mean, he actually did that, but
Yeah.
it's very parental. Like it's what you do when a kid is just performing and you're like, you know what? You're on your own. Like, I'm out. I'm out. Just do whatever the hell you want. You want to educate yourself? You want to like get, you know, just I'm done. I'm opting out as a parent. What
Yeah,
are we?
I wish we had had a moment of acknowledgement that, you know, the mask thing started this, right? In the beginning, the CDC dropped the ball. They dropped the ball on testing, they dropped the ball on mask messaging, and they didn't acknowledge it. And so I think when, you know, if any parents are out there, if you're a boss, you have some responsibility for other people. If you make a mistake and don't own it, the people you're responsible for, they see that. And they're like, oh, you're full of bullshit. So I have been very much, you know, amplifying messages from the government, trying to get us all to row in the same direction, down with the orders, the commands, the mandates. And it's just really hard to do that and then see those voicing those decisions to not acknowledge the situation's changed because of this. We were wrong about that. We apologize. We know new things. And instead just pretend like it's been on point the whole time. And that's how you lose further trust in an already low trust environment. So I think that part was avoidable. I think, COVID emerges, pandemics happen apparently every century. So we couldn't necessarily stop the disease from emerging, but I think we could have had a much more honest response. And ironically, the government could have put more trust in the people's ability to handle the truth, to not back itself into a corner in so many different ways.
So to reference, you want the truth? Actually, you can handle the truth.
You can handle
Turns
the
out,
truth.
but it's so interesting because I'm actually teaching at NYU at the moment, and strategic communication, so essentially PR, and my students just had to do a role play pitch project where and we've worked on several projects. One was Uber at the time of COVID. The other one was Ebola. And you would be shocked, and maybe you remember, I didn't, but you would be shocked. People would be shocked that it was almost like deja vu all over again. Same thing with the CDC, with getting on flights, with the idea of borders and border control. We never learned from our mistakes. So there you go. Now, I got to say, like, what I've really, really loved about you, respected and admired about you, and I think the next wave of the next generation of, I don't even want to say storytellers, but certainly I would say truth tellers. One is people that tell the truth, people that are transparent, and people that are accountable as well. We need that's what's missing. That's what we need. I mean, this is essentially what we saw at the beginning of Web 2, right? But then the anonymity and the transparency was replaced with deep faking and trolls and and misinformation. But now maybe with Web 3, we can see a different kind of transparency coming back into play. This idea of accountability in the world of blockchain, where everything is on the public ledger. We need more truth tellers, and we need more accountable truth tellers, because you can tell the truth, but guess what? You're a human being. You can also make a mistake. But can you be accountable to that mistake, and can you do better? Maybe that's part of this idea of regeneration.
I mean, I hope so. There's a lot of expectations placed on Web3 to be better than Web 2, and the default settings do not guarantee that outcome. We still have abuse of power. We still have concentrations of wealth. We still have scams and fraud and misinformation, in terms of the hype versus the truth of it. So just like giving every kid a laptop didn't solve education, like giving everybody a crypto wallet doesn't solve the financial system. And so there's a level of education that needs to go along with that truth and transparency and accountability, so that we build this differently. My hope is not just in the protocols that define Web3, but in the timing, that we are still early enough and we have recent awareness of what we missed in Web 2 to try to design this more justly, more fairly, more inclusively, and more sanely than we did with the previous version of our connected, technologies.
I really love that idea of protocols and timing. And one of the things that we say now to people, and certainly I'm saying it a lot now, is it's not, if you think you're too late, we haven't even begun.
Yeah.
We're at the top of the first inning or the bottom of the first inning in the first game of the World Series, or maybe it's the first game of the season. I mean, to use a baseball analogy, it's just beginning. But I think what you're saying is, let's make sure that we don't go down a path that we can't come back from. So at any point in time, if we feel this is wrong, let's just stop and let's start again, or let's pivot, or let's make sure that we don't make a mistake that becomes a permanent one. Let's basically, I tell you, with the Alpha Collective now, we had I came up with a tagline, basically, which I wish we go with, which is basically, let's not fuck it up again. It's like to me, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the essence of it. It's like, why do we keep making the same damn mistake?
Because I think the same people are making a lot of the design decisions. I think we have financial incentives to overlook certain mistakes because the cost of those mistakes isn't borne by everyone making the decisions. They're externalities. The mistake of capitalism is to extract everything from the finite resource that is our planet, but not have that cost borne by the people doing the extraction. It's kind of borne by us collectively, but if you have enough resources, you can insulate yourself. So that there's mistakes built into that economic system. And we've repeated them and repeated them and repeated them because there's enough money and enough profit, enough incentive, and enough imbalance of power in the system that cost is borne by folks who are not really in charge of the implementation. With the Web3 stuff, I want us to ask some of the questions that the designers of Web2 didn't ask. Like, how do I want to feel in this networked environment? Now, if you start with a basic premise of like, what do I want this experience to feel like? We wouldn't have created Twitter. We just, no one wants to feel like they're just drowning in the comment section of the worst blog in the world. That's what Twitter feels like to so many people. We wouldn't want it to feel like Facebook and defending against and being assaulted by misinformation and all kinds of crazy trolls and campaigns. We wouldn't choose that. So we know what that feels like now. How can we set out, still at this early stage, to ask how we want this experience to feel? What problems are we actually trying to solve? And then make sure that we have enough people in the room who represent the world that are involved in redesigning a system for the world. And that was also missing. It wasn't very representative. They were kind of like unelected ambassadors and spokespeople designing for all. And we don't have to do it that way either. So this isn't pie in the sky stuff. There's like a great Web2 example from Taiwan. Audrey Tang, the digital minister of Taiwan, we had her on my podcast, How to Citizen, and what they're up to, how the government of Taiwan has used technology to engage its public, build more trust, distribute quality information, and get the inputs of its citizens. It's happening right now. So like another internet is already possible, even in Web 2, depending on, do we ask the right questions and do we involve enough people in answering them?
So I want to jump into something else in a minute, but just first of all, Wesley Faulkner's here, and he said hi to both of you. Lots of people are just shouting out to you. There's Joe McLaughlin and
hey, we got the family reunion.
There he is, and Anthony said, "Welcome, Baratunde. What a pleasure! It certainly is." We'll go to some of the comments shortly, but let's take a brief pause for a moment and go from the sublime to what I call the ridiculous, which is today is National Make Lunch Count Day. And we know that Baratunde loves nothing more than to eat with people that he doesn't live with. So Baratunde, are you a lunch guy? Do you eat lunch or do you skip lunch? Are you intermittent fasting? What's your lunchtime eating regime?
Wow. I do eat lunch. I'm not a meal skipper. That doesn't feel good. So I avoid that.
It sounds like a Larry David moment, right? You a meal skipper?
Yeah, no. Meals are important and I eat them. Today, my plan is to saute up some veggies that are in our fridge. And then my wife made some fish last night. So that'll be the protein that goes along with that. And I may improvise something. We'll see what's in the cupboards. I don't always have the lunch plan sorted out, but I always have lunch.
All right. So now, breaking news on the show, the production value is so high that now we know all about Baratunde's eating habits. But what we don't know is who is the new Baratunde Thurston. So we sent our private investigators into the field to find out some fun, weird facts that even the National Enquirer does not know about him. And the first thing we found out about him is that he just loves composting. Is that even the right to composting or composting? Can I blame it on my accent?
You can blame it on your accent. Composting, yes.
So no, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on as I was searching for images of you, like life, complete, no photoshopping here whatsoever. Why do you love composting? How do you compost? How often do you compost?
I think it's magic. So I like composting because it turns waste into something valuable. It's regenerative. To go back to that language you started off the show with.
Yeah.
It's free. It is alchemy in a form of magic. I think it's kind of a wizardly act to take your food scraps and your grass clippings and dried leaves and throw them in a pile or a tumbler and nurture that and then feed that, to plants. So I thought composting was newish, to me moving to LA 3 years ago, because we had a yard and there were actual grass clippings like in Brooklyn. I didn't want to put the stuff in a compost there. There's a lot of stuff on the street you don't want to put in your compost in Brooklyn. But I would donate to the city composting efforts when I lived in Brooklyn, but there was no space to do it in my little apartment. Here, we got a little yard and there's fruit trees and all kinds of stuff is happening. And then I remembered I composted as a kid. I had totally forgotten about this. And I was thinking back to my kind of middle school, high school era. And I dug a little pit in our yard and I put coffee grinds in there and grass clippings. And I was like amateur composting. So I think it helps our ecosystem. I think it limits the waste that we put in landfills. I think it builds community. I have little kids in the neighborhood collecting scraps from their kitchens and like telling their parents, don't throw that away. That's for Baratunde's compost. And so composting is adorable as well. When you got little kids like bringing their garbage to your house, that's really neat. And I think it's the kind of thing we need to be doing more of to make our lives here more enjoyable, so we survive the climate onslaught that's coming.
Yeah.
Composting is a specific type of effort we can take to reuse and recycle and regrow and regenerate.
I mean, I'm all in on that as well. I'm going to go out to my yard as well and start digging a hole as soon as this show is done. Jason is here and he said, Baratunde, great to see you on the Jaffe show. Jason has a coin on rally.io. I have the Jaffe coin, and that QR code above my head, I have made sure specifically this is designed for your community, Baratunde, for anyone connected to you. Normally that is live right now.
I'm clicking the link right now. Bonfire.xyz.
Yep.
Wow.
Sometimes you need, as long as you are on rally.io or have you registered, you got yourself 0.1 of a Jaffe coin, which is about $1. Jaffe's sitting at about 10 at the moment. And I decided to make sure there are about 100 of them available, and there's no gate. So it's for anyone that is here for and through Baratunde. That a little offer is for you. That's also part of the idea of shared ownership. That's not just about a host and a guest and audience, that it's like we, right, is greater than me. So just wanted to send that as well. Kevin said, by the way, lunch is good. And Anthony says, what an infectious smile, Baratunde. I feel so uplifted. It makes composting great. And there you go. At least he didn't say make composting great again. And Kevin says, admiring your hosting skills, great segues and fun visuals. Yeah, we have a little bit of fun. Jason says, I've included Jaffe coin in my 401k. Just make sure that you've put in the abbreviation. It's 4.01k. When it comes to the Jaffe coin. But let's keep going. We found out something else about Baratunde, which is, and this is a very interesting one, is we all knew that you were a deep thinker, but you're also a deep dreamer. And sometimes you revisit the same place across multiple dreams, which makes you think that the dream world is real and the world is the dream. This is very matrixy, but I actually even went and had a look and said, well, what is deja vu in dreams? There's something going on here. Look at this. It says that 95% of people might have experienced it's called deja review, not deja vu, but deja review in the past. And 20% of respondents in another study were from dreams. It says 20% of the respondents reported their deja vu experiences were from dreams. And so something's going on here. I don't think you're alone.
That's good. I've always enjoyed, well, not always, nightmares I don't enjoy, but I have often remembered my dreams. I've often dreamed very deeply. And sometimes I feel like there's little messages in there or opportunities. My mother passed away in 2005. So it's always very special when I get to hang out with her again in my dream. And if I remember even a little bit the next day, that kind of carries me through and feels like a reunion, basically a family reunion.
Well,
Other times it's just weird, and you have these moments where you try to explain, like I'll try to explain my dream to my wife. And as I'm saying it, like I sound like a crazy person. But right before the words came out, it felt perfectly reasonable to voice this, incoherent, irrational, non-linear narrative. And other times, as you just shared, I'll end up in the same place or interact with the same people. And it just raises a little question mark about, what the role of that realm is for us. And, what if it's a Matrix moment? What is real? How do you define real? To do a poor, version of Morpheus here. So yeah, dreams are interesting to me, and even more so lately, especially during COVID. My dreams got extra weird, and I think that happened to billions of people across the world because we were riding a different frequency and knocked off of our routines, and that showed up in our dream space as well.
I thought that was a fantastic version of Morpheus. I'm sure.
Thank you.
You want to try? You want to go for the trifecta with free your mind.
Free your mind.
I'm taking the red pill right now.
Again.
Yeah, yeah. I actually saw the Matrix on the plane now, the new one. It was called Resurrection, or was it called Regeneration? I don't know. It's one
Matrix Resurrections.
Yeah. No. So Baratunde, one more little fun fact, but I think it's an interesting one as well, which is the fact that, I mean, this to me, because there's so much truth that comes through comedy and through parody. You worked for The Onion from 2007 to 2012, and you led an effort to try and buy it at the end of your time there. I figured it might be good to actually go into The Onion, and this was just classic, right? Which is The Onion's guide to Web3. For example, what is Web3? The next iteration of the internet. Web3 will decentralize power from big tech companies and give it to individual big tech billionaires. How can I get Web3? Sign up now to receive a 100-hour free trial on CD-ROM. And then this one is just fantastic. What's wrong with Web 2? Earlier iterations of the internet have nearly zero exploitative value left. So I mean, it's
yeah.
classic.
Speaking of truth telling, there's a lot of truth in that, and we're in such an interesting Web3 moment where you've got kind of this spectrum. You've got the diehards who are down for maximum noise, focused on profit, rug pulls, pump and dumps, just scams, speculation, and mass financialization. And I think, as you pull in from that fringe edge, you still are living with this premise that it's good to have everything in an immutable public record. I don't know that it is, actually. I think some things should be mutable. I think we change as people, we evolve, we grow. And if there's a permanent record of my mistake, is that something that I want? My wallet represents all my financial transactions. Like, do I want people just looking into my bank account? Probably not. So there's beauty in it, but there's also like extraordinarily strong values assumed in it. And the baseline of it is financialization, is tokenization, and is transaction. It's assigning financial value to every interaction. And I'm skeptical of that. I'm skeptical of the language of minting and mining and tokens and coins. And I'm like, why does that sound familiar? Auctions, like we've done all that to the earth and to people. It's like, do we want to be assigning financial value to people? I feel like that's a slippery slope as a descendant of people who were valued financially and not morally or humanely. So that's like a risk zone, in this. And then you have this other end of the spectrum, which is about, as you put it, with, the host guest audience relationship around a show, kind of collective investment, shared ownership, collaboration, distribution of power toward the edge, cooperatives, essentially digital co-ops. DAOs are this brand new thing. No, they're co-ops. My wife is like, that sounds like a co-op, but we don't, there's so much history embedded in this future vision. To be racing toward the future and ignoring everything that came before isn't always the wisest move. So there are people who are aware of that history, and I'm excited about that end of the spectrum. I found this community, this regen Web3 community, and there are a bunch of Gen Z kids, who have run this thing called the Dream DAO, and they're all about regeneration, kind of like regenerative agriculture, a little bit of what we're talking about with composting, applied to Web3. How do we make that like a circular economy? How do we recycle resources and not just extract them? And so I think if it's possible to bring those values into this new layer of our reality, we got a really good shot. And I'm not one of those people that's so upset by this end of the spectrum, by the scamming, that I'm going to write the whole thing off. Otherwise, I'd write off living in a house. I'd write off wearing clothes because there's exploitation in making clothes. I don't think a total opt-out because there's some fraud and some poison in the system is a healthy response to the challenge. I think we need to promote the values we want and shape this thing while we still can.
Kevin says, thanks for acknowledging the different Web3 views, Baratunde, including the parts that sound problematic. Yeah. I think there is something good at the core, but not clear the core will win. And I mean, it's very interesting. He said, and he has a question, given the complex Web3 terminology, how do you see the key concepts being explained and embraced by the general public? I have to say, by the way, in addition to that, you're right, words matter. and mining and there are some problematic words, and we have to, and we have to be able to sometimes take a step back and say, why are we assuming that these are the words? Right? Yeah. Why? So I don't know what you think about his question as well. How do you see the key concepts being explained and embraced by the general public?
For now, very poorly. It reminds me of the language of legislation. The bills that Congress passes, which they don't even read, are not meant for human consumption. They're not human readable documents. The terms of service in the various software products and hardware products, and that line is blurring. So just products that we use, we have terms of service for our cars now, which really limit the idea that we own our cars. We're just renting everything. We have licenses to stuff, not just media, to everything that we use on a regular basis. And language, very professional, very narrow language can be used to create confusion and to take something from people that they might not willingly give. So I'm cautious of that. I think there's a path where you get storytellers, you get truth tellers, you get translators, and you get more people coming into the system. You get more folks explaining how that system works and hopefully adjusting some of that language along the way. And that's where leadership comes in. That's where good product design comes in. So it's not, all is not lost, but it is a familiar path. And the financial world, even before Web3, was rife with what's a credit default swap. We all learned that term back in 2008, 2009, because it sank the global economy. But even the people who were experts didn't really understand what they were doing. And the language was, I think, a part of that misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean, not dissimilar is the very concept of minting. I mean, I'm the first person to admit that I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm playing with fire. I'm clicking on MetaMask. I'm doing these things, and I'm basically going in blind. I'm going in with fumes of faith, or faith of fumes. And it could go horribly, horribly wrong at any twist and turn. And that's what's really happening. Is it goes back to that's why I kind of wrote down what we need are the terms of Web3 service. What we need is accountability. One of the things that I was saying the other day is everyone keeps talking about roadmaps. Roadmaps are bad. Roadmaps are terrible. No one believes roadmaps. And I said, no, actually, here's the problem with the roadmap. The roadmap, it's not the roadmap, it's the accountability. So if I mint, if I mint a collection at 0.1 and you know, and at 50% I'm meant to deliver. If I don't, then 50% of that 0.1 should be held in escrow. 50% of it, the community should own, and only release it to the founders when the
Yeah.
founders show that they can deliver. It's as
So
simple
see,
as that.
and what's so much. There's so much right there. First of all, what you just said is the terms of service of a Kickstarter, right? Like, it's crowdfunding. You know, we already have a word,
Right.
and so we're taking crowdfunding and we're taking co-ops, and we're taking the idea of money and we're kind of mixing it all together. But at least those two core ideas, and withholding the treasury until a certain threshold is met or a certain milestone is met. These smart contracts should be capable of doing that. You know, they're so smart. We don't need people anymore. And that's actually the deepest doubt that I have, Joseph. I think when we use terms like trustless, and it's like, oh, you know, I read the Bitcoin white paper about a year ago. Finally, it's not very long. I encourage everyone to read it because it is the alpha document, you know, in terms of the collective of people who are into all things Web3, NFT, crypto, DAO, whatever kind of language you want to use. But at the core of it was mistrust of people. We cannot trust people to not steal. We cannot trust people to accurately reflect the balances on their own ledgers, because when they collapse the whole economy. So the mistrust is earned, you know, and all kinds of people in the world have stories of being taken advantage of by people because they trusted them and shouldn't have. But is the answer to outsource trust to machinery also built by people? Maybe, you know, if you can see into the process and there's accountability, as you've talked about so many times in our time together today, you could have a little bit more trust. But I heard someone ask at a conference I hosted last year, unfinished.com, the conference, they said, what would it look like to build not trustless systems, but trustful systems? I love that language play. And the last thing on language I'll say, because we could live in this space for another 2 hours. I'm not against the hacking culture and the challenge. You know, I remember I've oscillated between like glee and joy on one hand and just absolute frustration on the other, trying to figure this whole space out. Someone told me I needed to have my own .eth domain name. How do I do that? YouTube, Reddit, Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, Google, clickety clack clack. It's 2 a.m. The gas fees are 80. What is going on? And so there's a part of me like, this is dumb. I hate it all. Who built this? And then there's the kid in me who like took apart his computer and didn't quite put it back together, and took apart the family television and didn't quite put it back together. That so enjoys it because it's this tinkering sort of workshop level that we're at, where there are not really great guides for a lot of this stuff yet, because we're still figuring it all out. And I want to just allow some space for the joy of discovery and tinkering and like that Radio Shack era of building something new that we're also in, and not disregard it all as obfuscation and scammage.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to just go back for a second to what you said about mutable, which I was actually a guest on another podcast earlier today, and I said I have a very simple model that applies almost to everything that I do professionally and personally. When we think about this idea of progress, of evolution, you know, I know something you wanted to chat about today is also this idea of growth, personal growth, not just as a human, but even as a male in today's times. But it's as simple as this, which is we need to reject the worst of the old, and there's a lot of that. But we need to keep the best of the old. And that could be everything from the golden rule to kindness, empathy, to also common sense, like loyalty or advocacy or whatever. We need to embrace the best of the new, but we also need to avoid the bright and shiny objects, the distraction, the dilution of the worst of the new. And so in what you said, just to reframe what you said, is all transparency sometimes is not the answer, and all immutability is not the answer. Sometimes we do need to, it's the same thing like with privacy or oversharing. Let's not check our common sense and our sanity and our humanity at the door, for God's sake?
100%. One of the South by Southwest is on my mind because that's where I met you. Wesley Faulkner, who was in the chat, that's where I met Wesley, and we got to have a reunion this year. And it's been such an important space for my growth as someone involved in technology and also issues of race and justice and citizenship. And an early influence is a now friend named Dana Boyd. She gave the keynote many, many years ago. And she was the first person I knew to publicly challenge Mark Zuckerberg and his vision for all of us, which many of us will now acknowledge was a terrible vision. I don't want to live inside of Zuckerberg's world. Like, I don't want to live in Stephen King's world. His mind is mad and the fictional universes he creates are super, super terrifying. And I don't want to live in Zuck's world either.
Yeah.
And his actually affects the real world much more than the mad mind of Stephen King. But what she had called Zuckerberg out for was the presumption of publicness, of the real name policy, of default public posts. And she said something like, that is a very easy position to take if you have nothing to hide and you live in a system built to maximize, your value, your comfort, your sense of belonging. If you're a straight white guy in the US, that's very different from being a poor immigrant LGBTQ kid in the Sun Belt. And do you really want the default setting to out people who aren't ready for that yet? Maybe their families aren't their advocates. Maybe their community shouldn't know this about them yet. Maybe they don't know it about themselves yet. And so years later, you see Facebook knows you're gay before you even know you're gay. Like, she saw a lot of this coming. And so I want us to be applying, that same skepticism and healthy questioning to some of these more absolutist statements. Immutable, always good. Like, probably not. Publicness, always good. Definitely not. So you gave this 2 by 2. It's not best, worst, new, old. And if you had a visualizer of this chat right now, like, you could map what do we do in each of these little quadrants. Sorry, I was a consultant for a long time and that part never left me.
We get paid by the quadrant. So
yeah, but per slide.
We get paid by the acronym as well.
Yes.
I actually I coined the term this idea of fake doxing. That what Web 2 did is Web 2 with its filters and with its fake essence of what the perfect idealistic Instagram life looked like was fake doxing. We were seeing it, but it wasn't necessarily the truth or even close to it. It was a distortion of the truth. And all those tools, those filters that seemed so fun, so Baskin Robbins fun at the time, were actually quite malicious. Today is Wellness Wednesday, and we're going to go to Whitney Lauritsen, who is our correspondent. You've written for the Daily Show. Hopefully I don't get sued, but in a way, positioning wise, what I'm trying to build is the Daily Show for business, or the Daily Show even for Web3 here. So she's the correspondent, but I thought I want to give you an opportunity to talk about Puck. And in relation to this idea of investing in yourself and the relationship with yourself, you've written on what happened with Will Smith and also how it affects you, etc. So tell us a little bit about Puck, and then just from a wellness standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, from this idea of self-love and self-care, how you've been writing. And what your discovery looks like through this period of time.
Yeah, Puck is a subscription-based media company, primarily print, print being like text on screen now. And I'm one of the founding partners. There's roughly 10-ish, 12-ish of us, primarily journalists, like hardcore journalists with sources and methods and that kind of thing. And the mission of Puck is to cover these 4 major centers of power. Represented by geographies, but also industries. So Washington, D.C. for politics, New York City for finance, the Bay Area for technology, and Hollywood for the entertainment industry. And I am a writer there. I do a lot of kind of op-ed style writing. Essentially, I'm a columnist. And I took an opportunity to write about the Will Smith moment, which my colleagues wrote from different angles. They have sources at the agencies and at the academy and kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. I wrote about it from the perspective of what was going on behind the scenes for me as I watched this man lose himself, really, and lose the self that he had created. And so there's a key moment that I connected based on some other people's writings as well, but looking at his memoir. And essentially, Will Smith had acknowledged in his recent memoir that the Will Smith we know, this affable, relatable, successful, positive, peaceful person, was a construct, was a character that he had created to shield himself from the shame of the little boy in him who witnessed his mother being beaten by his father and was powerless to stop it. And so there's this raging monster inside of him. He wrote it all down. It's all right there in the book. It came out last fall. The timing is uncanny. And what we saw happen was that character fell apart, really painfully and perfectly timed at an event to celebrate his ability to hold character, to stay in character. That the Oscars is nothing if not fiction and a celebration of it. And his fiction fell apart at the height of his powers and at the height of his recognition of those powers. So there's a lot that could be said about the inappropriateness, the violence, the shock of what he did. I was more interested in, asking myself, like, what character have I constructed? What childhood things or traumatic things have I not really dealt with? Because I don't want it to come out like that. And if his collapse can help the rest of us, deconstruct those characters more peacefully, more conscientiously, with more control, then there may be some service, some public value out of this other than just talking head chitter chatter and judgment and hurt. So that's what that piece was about. And it's in the context of what Puck is about. Puck costs money, again, subscription based, but I think it's well worth it because you get pieces like that. Julia Ioffe is one of my colleagues. She is one of the premier voices in all of the United States on the war in Ukraine. And I get to hang out with her in Slack. And we've got legal analysis and all kinds of other stuff going on. But this piece was cutting into a little bit of the soul work that I hope more of us do. And some that I've had the opportunity to do. It's on my mind because COVID gave me a lot of time with myself. And so I started cracking through the shell of my own character, finding things and piecing them back together in a way that was healthy.
I think you spoke about what happened with Will Smith and the way you summarized the article really beautifully. And and the thing that is you spoke about timing, right? You spoke even earlier when we go back to the idea of protocols and timing,
right?
That this was almost foreshadowed. But then, and there was like a premonition or a glimpse of what was there, lurking, hiding, repressed. But you're right. I mean, it could not have happened at a worse time. It literally happened 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever the case was before his finest moment.
Yeah.
That has to land and that has to sink in. And we have to think about, and I don't even have a response for that at the moment.
Yeah.
But I do think that to be, when and I'm not just saying this to you now, but I've looked to model myself as a host now, and I've to embrace and step into this new role. I wasn't this before COVID. I was a speaker and an author and a consultant and a it's funny because I'm looking at what Brigetti said. I'm in bed in pain and feeling really sorry for myself and scrolling through my feed. Then I see this. Baratunde and I are both legends. He in his own time, me in my own mind. Got to thank you for making me laugh, Joseph Jaffe. Poetry at its best. I've tried to model myself on Jon Stewart, on Howard Stern, on Bill Maher, on Tim Ferriss for different reasons to try and shape this new persona, this new role. But ultimately, I now have a new role model, and that is you. I really do believe that you are what is representative of the way things will need to be, should be, and must be. And the transparency it's a smart strategic transparency, but it is also an accessibility. You know, Kevin said this: thank you for really answering my question. That gains huge props for me. Definitely glad to have met you on the show and plan to listen more to what you have to say. The bottom line is, when we look at media personalities, when we look at hosts, when we look at people like yourself who are in the upward, almost exponential rocket ship hockey stick trajectory, they all lose themselves. They lose touch
Yeah.
with the crowd, with audience, with people that they used to hang out and eat with at South by Southwest. That's what I'm trying to make sure does not change, that I am, in fact, more accessible, not less, as I please God grow and as the show grows. And now I see, you know, who my benchmark is. It's you.
Joseph, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I accept the compliment, and it is, I'm learning, and I'm growing, and I'm trying to bring more of myself, less of the character, you know, of me, and the performer and the pleaser and the de-escalator. You know, I've very much been a peacemaker most of my life, and my COVID journey on camera has been similar, I think, to yours, and just in terms of trying to be more grounded and really answer the question and wrestle with the tough stuff and share more. And it's the opposite of what the experience I had before COVID. You know, I got very close to hosting shows on some pretty major outlets, and in one instance, I made a pilot, one of 3 that I made for this network in like a 3-month period, 2-month period. And I was sitting in the office of the executive, looking back at the tape, and there was a moment in the conversation where, you know, this expert shared some insight, was totally new to me. And I said, "Oh, I didn't know that. Tell me more." And the executive paused the playback. It's like, "You see that moment right there? You can't do that. You have to know everything. The audience needs you to know everything." And I was like, "But the audience doesn't know everything. And I literally don't know everything. I think it's valuable for them to see me as a person who is also learning. And if I can kind of learn in public, that should build a stronger connection. No, n'est-ce pas?" And he like barreled forward on me. So I was like, I'm glad it didn't work out, because I would hate to be accountable to that. And I'd rather be accountable to the people I'm making the show for, people making the show with. So he gave me a lesson, you know, one that I hadn't quite learned before then, because I was like, I had to keep it all together, keep it all bottled up. But sometimes that explodes. And just one last note on the Will Smith thing, that a friend of mine, Preston Smiles, he said this recently. And he said, "What you run from will chase you." And I was like, oh, wow. I'm gonna be chewing on that one for a while. It's a very simple sounding sentence. It has layers of truth to it. And so for all of us, just what are we running from? No. Can we turn around and face it? Can we welcome it, actually? Which doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable or easy, but some of the most valuable experiences are uncomfortable.
You know,
And that pain is also, you know, can be a sign of growth. That's how we do it physically. Weightlifting hurts, crunchies hurt, but they're part of a greater process of strengthening and growth. So that is the bar I set, you know, is there. I definitely don't reach it all the time. But again, thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing such kind words like that.
I mean, you're welcome. And let me just ask you live on air, can you go for another few more minutes? Because I want to make sure that we also talk a little bit about PBS and how to citizen, and we'll listen to Whitney in a minute. I want to go back to this. It's a Monty Python, a fantastic Monty Python skit. I think it's in The Search for the Holy Grail, where they come to the bridge, and the bridge keeper asks the question, and I think it's in my terrible accent, it's like, "What is your favorite color?" You know, and they go, "Red, no blue," and they go, "Ah," and then you just see them like flying over the bridge.
Yeah.
And then eventually it gets to, "What is your name?" And he goes, "So Galahad the Great." You know, "What is your favorite color?" "Purple." And then the final question is, "What direction does the swallow fly when migrating?" And so he goes, "Are you referring to the American or the African swallow?" And the bridge keeper goes, "Oh, I don't know." And you see the bridge keeper going, "Ah." Like, and that's the power of I don't know. Is like
Yeah.
we are programmed not to show fallibility and vulnerability. We are programmed not to be able, and it is the most powerful thing to be able to say is, you know what? I actually don't know. That is a great question. You know what? I'll get back to you. Is that okay? Can I get back
Yeah.
to you? And
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, it's not really that hard from a psychological standpoint to be able to demonstrate I don't. And here's the thing, maybe you do, maybe there are people out there that know all the answers, but more often than not, there are people that are basically bullshitting, and they're going to be found out by trying to act smarter than they are and being exposed in the process.
Well, and we have protocols, we have incentives to perform certainty. And this goes for everyone, you know, across political spectrum, genders, all the spectra. You know, we are incentivized to perform certainty, to have answers, to communicate answers we don't have. And you know, I've spoken, for one example, to a lot of white people over the past couple of years. You know, since the summer of 2020, I get called in as this kind of DEI, inspirational, challenging, comedic mix of stuff. And I sense the pressure that business leaders, that any random white person has. You got to say something. I mean, you got to issue a statement on behalf of, as if we're all press secretaries now, speaking on behalf of an administration we didn't know we were a part of. And I remind them, and I remind all of us, you don't have to have an answer. Not on the spot, not demanded by someone you barely know. And like, remember your own power and your own agency. That doesn't mean don't care. It doesn't mean don't research. It doesn't mean don't take the time. It actually means the opposite. It means do those things. Demonstrate your care by doing research and taking time and getting back to the person and checking in with yourself. How does this feel? What do I not know? Oh, that's weird. Glad I didn't just copy and paste some PR spin, some crisis managed paragraph that someone slid across my desk. So the performance and the pressure to perform certainty can create harms, you know, and then we get resentful that we were backed into a corner to say something that we didn't really believe, but the crowd made us do it. And I don't think that long-term serves us. I want people genuinely to make statements on behalf of marginalized communities of whatever kind we're discussing. So giving yourself permission to not know, taking the time to try to know more before you open your mouth, that can be really healthy for all of us.
I love that. And I actually just jotted down here the certainty of uncertainty. You know, to be really confident about your lack of confidence is in of itself the essence of humility. I'm going to give you a choice. Whitney produced two, because I think she's going to be away next week. She has the Well coin. She also has a coin on rally.io. So one was about Oculus and fitness, and the other one was called Joyful. Which one would you like to hear? I have a feeling Joyful. I know that's what I thought. And that was dated April the 20th. And I'm like, you know what? And what's interesting about it is she cites dreams. So let's hear what Whitney has to say. And then we will bring it home. I have secretly and maliciously made sure that this will be my longest show ever, because I want you to have that record, Baratunde.
All right.
And it shall not be broken. Here is Whitney.
One thing that really supports me in my overall well-being is to read, especially before I go to bed, as a way of winding down. And when we're asleep, we tend to process a lot of things. So I find taking in information before I go to bed is a great way for me to think things through in a unique way. The book that I've been reading recently is called Joyful. And there were some really good points in this that I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to read some quotes from it. Number one, the book says that a body of research is emerging that demonstrates a clear link between our surroundings and our mental health. For example, the drab tones of most school buildings and offices are understimulating, which can lead to restlessness and difficulty concentrating. The liveliness of color helps us marshal the energy we need to learn, be productive, and grow. research also consistently shows that increasing exposure to daylight reduces blood pressure and improves mood, alertness, and productivity. Employees who sit near windows report higher energy levels and tend to be more physically active both in and out of the office. And that really made me feel good because I'm sitting in front of these windows that have really made a big difference once I moved my desk here. Plus, they provide really nice natural lighting for my videos. Another great point in that book is that many of us have been told that we should dress for the job we want. But the author challenges us to think about dressing for the joy we want and choosing colors based not on what other people think, but how the colors make us feel. So that really got me thinking about the clothes that I could wear, but also just my whole surroundings. And trust me, ever since I started reading this book, I'm like, wow, this room is really white. How can I add more color beyond this painting here? But there's also a reason that this painting really stands out to me and other people when they enter this room. It's a lot of colors, it's a lot of nice design. So could I add some more of that into my home? I also wanted to mention something in the book called the 10 Aesthetics of Joy, which reveal a distinct connection between the feeling of joy and the tangible qualities of the world around us. For instance, energy is related to vibrant color and light. So how could you add more into your life, into your clothing, so that you had more energy? Abundance is lushness, multiplicity, and variety. So can you think about that in terms of what's around you? Freedom, nature, wildness, and open spaces. Can you create more of that in your home? Can you spend more time in nature to feel more freedom? The book has so many great points in it. I am only, I think, like 15% the way through, so I may share more with you later, but I really encourage you to get a copy of this to learn more about the surprising power of ordinary things to create extraordinary or extraordinary happiness.
That was great. I love
Brava, that was beautiful.
Whitney, I hope you're watching.
Also, I've seen I thought every background from people's home camera setups. First trampoline I've seen in the background.
Yeah,
First time.
I'd like to see I'd like to see her do a segment where she's on the trampoline.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
maybe,
assuming that's a part of her joyful practice, just up and down, jump around, jump
exactly,
up, jump up, and get
bouncing.
down.
Well, there's the concept, right? Bouncing with joy.
Yeah.
This is the quote that I selected for you, and that's why I went into regeneration, degeneration,
Yeah.
generation. I mean, the word generation is in regeneration. This comes from Charles H. Spurgeon, no relation to Charles H. Sturgeon. I think he's English, from maybe, I don't know, 100 years ago. But I love it. Every generation needs regeneration. And certainly, if Baratunde Thurston is a product or the embodiment of a generation that will make sure that the next generation is wiser, smarter, more active, more plugged in, more proactive, and more accountable, then we are all in good hands. Baratunde, tell us a little bit about, just in the few moments we have left, but take as long as you want. Because as I said, it's my show, damn it. It's my show.
Yes.
And I'll go as long as you want me to. But I love everything around the branding of How to Citizen, because when we talk about citizen journalism, when we think about, maybe what we need now is citizen capitalism. We need to be able to figure out, tell us about How to Citizen, this entire platform, and then we'll also make sure that we mention the PBS show coming up.
Yeah. How to Citizen is, as is on your screen right now, reimagining citizen as a verb to help us reclaim our collective power. It's began as a podcast. There's 3 seasons under our belts now, and it was born of frustration with the news in part, and then the larger culture around it that talked about people with power and people without power, but mostly told us all the broken things and no way to fix them, and nothing to be done except watch more news about how everything is broken. So I architected this show with my wife. We came up with these 4 principles in conversation with our guests, these 4 pillars, as we call them, of what it means to interpret the word citizen as a verb, as opposed to just a legal noun status. And it's, to show up and participate is the first of 4, which is really a mindset shift to presume that we have a role to play. Democracy is an active sport. We got to get in the game. I could go nuts with the metaphors, but I'll move on to the other principle, which is to citizen is to invest in relationships with ourselves, with others, and with the planet around us. And you and I have spent a good amount of time talking about that self relationship today and the planetary relationship, but we can't citizen alone. That's kind of the sub headline on that one. The third is that we understand power. To citizen is to understand power, the different ways that we have access to it and can use it. It's not just about physical force or voting. It's money, it's ideas, it's attention. What we put our attention on, we give power to. So we're all powerful, especially when we combine. We can generate power. And we learned that from one of our guests, Eric Liu. And the last pillar being that we value the collective, not just the individual. And we deploy all these things to benefit the many, not just the few. And we have a very individualistic society that prizes me figuring it out on my own. You solve COVID by yourself. That's where we've gotten to with even with Fauci, who was doing so much work to ensure our collective survival. And but the greater individualistic culture kind of subsumed that message, at least for a time. So yeah, we've done a whole season on the economy and capitalism. That was season 2. We did a whole season on tech, and the show is focused on people who are building things that help us citizen. They've got organizations, they've got companies, they've got practices. So it's a celebration by and large, rather than a diagnosis of our disaster. And we're working on season 4 right now. howtocitizen.com. Check us out. And we're on Instagram too. We're on Zuckerberg's property sharecropping like the rest of the world.
Yeah, for now, until
yes.
Until we just put a small D in front of the Instagram. We'll have Dinstagram.
Yes,
the
decentralized Instagram. That's right.
This man is very busy because he also has a PBS series called America Outdoors, which will be launching July 5th. Mark your calendar. And this is you meditating in Death Valley.
That's right. I'm here pictured in Badwater Basin. It's the lowest point in North America, and it gets very, very, very hot. We filmed this in, I believe, May, so it wasn't as hot as it gets in July or August, but it was plenty hot enough for me. So this is a show that I made with this production company out of Brooklyn, actually, Part 2 Pictures, for Twin Cities Public Television to be distributed, by all the PBS, member stations across the US. And I think internationally, they have some partnerships overseas as well. And I get to explore how Americans live and work and play outdoors. But I think of the show as kind of how to citizen outside. It's not like an extreme sports show. It's not about feats of extraordinary physicality, nor is it about conquest. Being the first at the top of the mountain and claiming that's a perspective on the outdoors that many of us are raised on. This is about people. It's like America, outdoors, and how we connect with each other, especially with all of our difference on this common ground that we share and these common waters and this common air. So I spent time with indigenous communities, 3 different nations of indigenous folks. I spent time on both coasts and in the middle, and swamps and ranches and surfboards in the water, hanging out with sharks and with regenerative farmers in both Appalachia and in northern Minnesota. And there's just so much beautiful stuff literally happening on the ground in this country. And it was a great way for me to break free of the screen interaction with my fellow Americans and bike with them and hike with them and fish with them and ride horses and get very sore from riding horses because I don't regularly ride horses. My butt hurt so bad. I was spent like 8 hours on a horse named Spider in Idaho. And being in a place called Death Valley that's full of so much life, and meeting the original inhabitants of that region, the Timbisha, who prefer to call it Timbisha because that's its original name. And there's nothing death about that valley unless you're a failed white expeditioner who had a hard time crossing and called it Death Valley for all time because you failed. So it's a fun show. It's really joyful. It's exciting. It was exhausting. And we get to talk about a lot of things that invite partisanship and frenzy and fury even, but not directly, so it's not a politics show or a climate change show, but it is because we are in the environment with people. I'm just so excited. 6 episodes, starts July 5th, and it's free. If you are a taxpayer in the United States of America, this is your show. Like, we are collectively a DAO, right? And we fund things through our tax dollars, and you own some of this show because PBS is publicly funded. And maybe you own a few more tokens in the DAO because you funded, PBS in some way through, viewers like you giving money. So watch the show you help create.
Love it. Kevin says long but great, referring to me, no doubt. I am long. You are great. This was an absolute joy for me, Baratunde. I want to let people out there know that this was the longest and the best episode. Baratunde is my best guest ever. I have said that to every single guest coming up.
Whatever. I didn't hear that. I heard this one. So
exactly. We'll leave it at that. If you want to follow Baratunde, and boy, and have I got work to do? I've already signed up, and I'm going to pay good money. I don't know if I can pay in Jaffe coin, but I will be joining. Puck as soon as this is done. But you can follow Baratunde for free at the moment on the Twitter. Follow him on Zuckerberg's Instagram until the Instagram comes out. Baratunde and at Baratunde and at How to Citizen. You can find him in the club at Baratunde. Subscribe to his channel on YouTube. You can discourse with him in Discord. Visit his websites, How to Citizen and Baratunde.com. You can even join his community. And all you got to do is, I'll leave this on as we go through the rest of these cycles. Sign up for Puck at puck.news and obviously /author/Baratunde. But just sign up. Can people sign up for an individual for you, or do they sign up to Puck in general?
So yeah, this is a good question. Your money gets you access to everybody, and that's the value to me. I'd been on Patreon, and then I was on Substack. And I still am on Substack, but I've paused the payments while I restructure my whole community infrastructure and what I'm actually charging people money for, like what's the value. But with Puck, you're not just paying for me. And as I introduced it, and one of the reasons I joined is it's me plus like 10 other people who do things I can't do. So that price, that value is really great. And then you can get in your inbox, mostly you can go to the website and browse, but you subscribe to different people's newsletters. And there's no incremental cost. It's just about how much email do you want in your life, and what subject matters do you want to be showing up kind of on a weekly basis.
Well, I know I want your email, so I'm going to go ahead and do that after the show. Finally, listen to the podcast and How to Citizen. Check out, of course, PBS series, America Outdoors. Baratunde, thank you for being so gracious with your time. I've really been looking forward to this. And you know who else has been looking forward to this? Mr. Chuck Norris, who had this to say about you. Not the Chuck Norris that apparently was wandering around on January 6th, who is not him, but this is a different Chuck. This is the Chuck Norris.
Okay.
Who you want to make sure is never looking for you. But this is what he had to say about you, Baratunde.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And I will be back tomorrow with Zoe. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.